Welcome to Future of Caregiving.
She referenced music therapy, and I was like, well, wait a second. So I can do music, and I can help people, and I can make a difference. Wait, what?
I am excited to be speaking with Rachael Lawrence-Lupton this morning. Rachael is a music therapist with an extensive background developing and creating programs to assist people with a diverse range of mental, physical, and cognitive abilities. She has a strong ability to sing and play multiple instruments, including the cello and guitar. Rachael now uses her talents and expertise to incorporate music therapy in hospice and palliative care settings. Hi, I'm your host, Leah Warnke, and this is Future of Caregiving, where we explore the rapidly evolving world of caregiving. From technological advancements to demographic shifts, we'll delve into the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead for those who provide care and those who receive it. I would love to start out by giving our listeners an idea of what is music therapy.
So music therapy is just like any of your traditional therapies. So physical therapies, occupational therapy, speech therapy, rec therapy, any place or anything like that. But what makes music a little bit different is that we're using music as a modality to achieve those non-musical goals. So, we might work in conjunction with a speech therapist to help with developing and reconnecting with somebody who's had a stroke and getting that speech back. Or maybe somebody, again, who's had a stroke who now has a shuffled gait and being able to work that physical therapist to help get that gait a little bit stronger and more consistent so that there's less treatment time that's needed. So as you said, I do specialize in hospice. And so a lot of what I'm doing is using music to help people in that last chapter of their life. So it might be to alleviate symptom burden. It might be to help them create legacies for their family and friends. It might be to help them in those very last moments. It might be similar to like a hospital type setting where I'm going to help them with procedural support and make those things just go a lot easier. Lots of different things that we're doing.
Sounds like you certainly have a very unique opportunity to help people alleviate that pain, to make their life just a little bit better. So it's really incredible work that you're doing. And I know that you have a background in music that expands beyond just the beginning of your career in music therapy. So do you mind giving us a little bit of background into your personal journey with music?
Yeah, so my journey with music started when I was 3, actually, and I saw Yo-Yo Ma and Mr. Rogers, and I went to my mom and I said, Mom, I want to play the cello and take lessons from Yo-Yo Ma, and she, as she should have, looked at me like I was a little bit crazy. She's like, okay, you're 3.
Yeah.
And then my brother had picked up the violin. About that time, he's a couple years older. And I started picking out whatever melodies he was playing on the violin. I started playing on the piano. And so my parents were like, well, I guess she's got a musical ear. We should probably nurture this, which I'm very grateful that they were able to and definitely did. And so I started playing the cello when I was 4. And I played all through elementary school, middle school, high school. And for me, my passion, even though music was such a big part of it, was not actually going into music. The options that I knew about at that time was much more performance or education only. And that just wasn't right for me. It wasn't made sense. So originally I went to college for biochemistry. I was going to be a pediatrician. And then I had a realization about halfway through, so right near the end of my sophomore year, and I said, I love the sciences. It's a lot of fun. It's just not my passion. I don't know what to do. And I talked with my mom and she referenced music therapy. And I was like, well, wait a second. So I can do music and I can help people and I can make a difference. Wait, what? And so, I had already had a minor in music and had the opportunity to take lots of great courses in psych and whatnot. And then when I finished my undergrad, then I switched to music therapy. And haven't looked back since. And that was, 17 years ago now I started for the schooling.
Wow. Makes me so happy to hear that you were able to find a career that combined your two passions and really makes an impact on people's lives. And so I know now you're working in the hospice and palliative care side of things. And I also know that the settings that music therapy can be utilized in are so vast, and you have a variety of experiences within music therapy. So I'm interested in learning some of the other aspects of healthcare, other conditions, other settings that music therapy could be incorporated into.
Absolutely. And music therapy, it really can be integrated in somebody's care as early as in the NICU and as late as end stage hospice, and really everywhere in between. Any place you're going to see any of those other traditional or non-traditional therapies, that's where you can find music therapy. So, professionally, I've had the opportunity to work with a residential middle school program and high school, which was fantastic. So these were kids that just couldn't live at home anymore. And so they lived on this campus, and developmentally, they were about 18 months to 3 years. And so my job was to create opportunities for them to not only engage with each other appropriately, but also try to help them with just learning different things, colors, shapes, sequences, really basic and remedial things. Most of the kids there had some kind of diagnosis of autism. And so it really was a way of dealing with all the different sensory aspects that we knew they were going to have, in a way for which music was at the forefront. And, we could see what happened. And one of my favorite project we did with these kids was they wrote a song by taking some of their favorite songs and taking the lyrics, and we took little bits and pieces from all the songs, put it together, and then had one kid read the lyrics who was a little bit more verbal than the others. Another one used GarageBand on my iPad to create like a drum beat, and they created this whole musical project. And then we made CDs, and we had a whole CD release party for them, which was just a great way for them to express themselves. Other populations that I've worked with, so in my clinicals in school, so I had the opportunity to work with the kindergarten classroom, which was just a lot of fun. I had some medically fragile kiddos, just some one-on-one work, with those that were really pretty debilitated, just that's where they were at. And then I did a semester in psychology. So I was in a psych ward, and so psychiatrics. And that was a wonderful opportunity for humility, right? Because the people that we worked with, they have voices that they're hearing in their heads a lot, and we had to redirect away from that. There's a lot of things that they are trying really hard to process and work through, and they're in a locked unit. And so, it's loss of autonomy, and what does that mean, and what does that look like, and how do you deal with it day to day, just based upon where they're at in their own, in their own heads and whatnot. And then obviously lots with geriatrics, which has definitely become my passion. My first job was in a nursing home. And so I was an activity director with a couple other music therapists. And we got to do just all kinds of different things of using music and instruments and doing drum circles, for which everybody dreaded that day because we had giant African drums and they made lots and lots of noise. But again, it's an opportunity for people to feel more normal. We also, because our department was made up of 3 music therapists, we did a concert hall series every other week. So we brought in our main instrument. So for me, that was cello, of course. One of our therapists brought in her flute, and the other one was a pianist. And we just played the music that they knew, often making it timely. So if it was around, like, for example, we're in July here. So the 4th of July, we did all patriotic music. Or on the holidays, we'll do all seasonal music. But we set it up where we wore all black, and it made it feel like they were going to a concert. And then we'd have refreshments afterwards. So it's, again, that chance for them to feel normal. So anyway, I could go on for a while.
Yeah, I was going to say, those are all such special projects, and it is clear that you get to make such a powerful impact on the lives of so many people. And I would have to imagine that you are also being impacted by these experiences, by these moments that you are having with the patients in your care. And so I'm curious, has there been a particularly meaningful moment in your career that has kind of shaped how you go about your practice, or maybe changed the way you think about things?
There's been a couple of major highlights, I'd say, in my career. How, if they've really changed per se how I practice that I'm not so sure about. But, I'll tell you two quick stories. So one of them was I recently had a patient. He played the harmonica. And, they referred me to him because he had significant challenges with pain and with anxiety, and he was restless. And, I was able to do a couple of visits with him before this one visit that we had. But at this point, he was bedbound. His ability to speak was pretty limited. And, so there was just not a lot. For me, it was much more of creating that space, paying attention to his nonverbal signals. Is he grimacing? What's going on with him? How rigid is he? Things like that. And, out of nowhere, he opened his mouth and he says, "I want to play the harmonica." And I'm like, "What?" Okay. So his wife, now mind you, I've been doing songs that he had previously recorded on this amazing CD. But his wife goes downstairs and gets a whole briefcase of harmonicas and is like, "Which one?" And I'm like, what? What is this world? Like, I have no idea. So, I had just been playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow for him. And so he grabbed a harmonica and he just started playing that. Out of nowhere. I mean, his ability to get breath in was just not really great. And we had to prop his arms up because he couldn't hold his arms up at all. And so we had pillows underneath there, and he just went to town and he just played. And so after that, he switched to a different harmonica, of course, because you can't just play one. And we just started improvising the blues. And his brother-in-law was able to capture it on video. And then we were able to share in that moment and have that. And that was just so out of this world, because here is somebody, he passed away a week or so later. He didn't live much more after that, but he had this moment of clarity and beauty, and we could create music together in a way that was just out of this world. And the best part was, as soon as he finished, he looks at his wife and goes, "Can I have some whiskey?" She's like, "You don't drink, but yeah, let's see what we have." Anyway, So that was an incredible experience where it just felt like a miracle. And the other one that really, I think, solidified to me just the power of what it means to be really present and with somebody. And I will say this may be a trigger warning. Again, I work in death and dying, so I want to own that space, and that this, it could trigger things for people. I had a woman who was in a nursing home type setting, and she was somebody who just wouldn't let go. And I'd been visiting with her for a really long time. I don't remember at this point how long it was, but when I got in there, I could tell we were getting towards the end, but even though we helped facilitate as many goodbyes and whatever needed to happen, she just wasn't ready. And so I did some music, and then I started strumming the opening chords to Imagine. And as I was just doing that opening pass, of 3 or 4 chords over and over, I started speaking to her, and I said, I want you to imagine what it's like where you're going. She was very faith-oriented, and I should say very Christian faith-oriented. And, I want you to imagine who you're going to see and what it's going to look like and what it's going to feel like, and what the experience will be like when you're walking again, which of course, she hadn't been in a very long time. And just went through several different things. And then at the end, I said, I want you to imagine letting go. And then I sang through Imagine. And by the end of the song, she did let go. And it ended, and she was totally gone. And it was, so beautiful and incredible that we have, as music therapists in hospice, we can hold that space and make it okay for people, who can't, they're not ready, but we can give them the space to do that. So.
Wow. I am at a loss for words. Both of those experiences sound truly powerful, and it is incredible that you got to play such an important role in that. And since you mentioned the context of someone practicing Christian faith, I'm interested in learning more. How does music therapy differ across cultural contexts? Because I'm sure you're working with a variety of different patients with a variety of different backgrounds. How do you take into account these cultural norms, cultural practices or wants into your music therapy?
So that's a really wonderful question. And it's something that as music therapists, we try really hard to make sure that we are culturally competent, right? And not just in the culture we grew up in. So, I have one patient, for example, who is from Mexico and very Catholic. And so I will do a lot of Catholic hymns in Spanish, because that's what she knows and that's what reaches her. At the same time, I will use different languages as much as I can. And frequently when it's not something that I know really well, as well as like English, for example, I'm always humble and willing to say, I'm going to do my best and please correct me if I'm wrong. At the same time, we also take into account, what are the practices in terms of physical touch, who can be in the space. Certain religions and faiths and cultures, for example, as a female, don't want any other men in the room when I'm singing or I'm with somebody, because that is considered very much taboo. And I'm going to be respectful of that. Certain people, I need to be very mindful of what instruments I use, because I'm constantly going to be adapting. I had one gentleman who was from Latvia. And so I would pull up his music that he knew and he resonated with. And then we used that as an opportunity to talk about it. And he could educate me about his culture. And so, it's very much about being open and willing to embrace the humility that we just don't know it. And that, we can't know every single culture and every single practice. And, empowering our patients to teach us is one of the greatest things we can do for them, because it gives them value and it helps them really feel like they still matter, even, if they can't do the things they used to do, or they don't identify with themselves the way they used to.
Yeah. And that's a practice that is so important across all healthcare spaces and most settings, all settings in general, just having an open mindset, a listening ear to really figure out what your patients want and what is important to them. So that it sounds like you are truly integrating this cultural competency into your practice, which is really great to hear. So for our listeners out there that have a relative or maybe themselves are interested in pursuing musical therapy, but they're a little unsure of what this starting process would look like. I'm sure the initial visit looks different for every person, but is there any commonality in experience that you can kind of guide someone who may be a little nervous to start with music therapy? What could an original orientation session look like?
Well, so just like other therapies, we're doing an assessment session, and there's always that ongoing sense of assessment, like trying to figure out where is that person at and where do they need to go to achieve their goals. And so, for a hospice setting specifically, when I go in to meet a patient for the first time, I am looking at every aspect of themselves, right? I'm looking cognitively. Can they make choices? Can they make decisions? Can they open their eyes? Can they answer me? If there's somebody with end stage Alzheimer's, do they open their eyes when I say their name? Are they alert to self? If they are somebody, who maybe has like a cancer diagnosis or something for which we know all their faculties are there, are they incredibly guarded? How willing are they to open up? We also look for how spiritually or religiously oriented is this person? How does that impact it? Does it impact the music that they may want? Do we need to tailor the session to be much more faith oriented? We're also looking at physically, what can they do? Do they have the ability to move their hands, or their legs? Can they play an instrument? Do they even want to play an instrument? We're looking at musical history. Do they have a history of singing in a choir or playing any kind of instrument? It's really looking at every single domain of the individual. And it's all I should say, in my sessions, it's not necessarily a very formal check sort of thing. It's much more, let's see where this visit goes and how it guides me, and that really determines it. And I may not necessarily, assess every single domain in that very first time, because it may not be appropriate, right? Things may not come up. We're also looking at support network, and does that person have the supports in place, to make them successful? We're looking at the environment, very similar to how, our social worker or our nurse may go into a space. We're saying, are there things that are red flags? Are there things that are really positive, that we can report back to the team? Or does our visit show a side of a person and their environment for which we need to coordinate with another discipline to get this person more services or more help or whatever it might be? So it's really kind of a free-for-all. And then also sometimes when somebody, is nonverbal, it's about, okay, what kind of music do they like and what's going to bring them out of their shell? We know people will respond to music from their teens and 20s the best because those are our formative years. And so even when they're 80, 90, into their 100s, that's the music they'll respond the best to. So we're kind of just like, if we don't know, we're just sort of throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping something's going to stick. Usually we figure it out. But yeah, it's a giant process, I should say.
Yeah, well, I would encourage anyone who thinks they might benefit from music therapy to look into it, because it certainly seems like something that a lot of people could benefit from. And I guess kind of going off that, for people out there who might not have easy access to music therapy, is there a way, if they are interested in using music intentionally, to better their life, better their condition? Obviously, we can't all do what you do because you are exceptionally talented and have years of experience, but on just a layman's level, how are ways that people or family members can use music with intentionality?
So that's a really wonderful question, because you're right, not everybody has the luxury of having access to music therapy. And I think it comes down to a couple of basic things. And the reality is we don't own music as music therapists. Music is accessible to everyone. And it's really about how can we use it, like you said, in a very intentional manner. And so I think about, again, knowing that people respond best to the music from their teens and 20s, turning on music that was important to that person. Always makes a difference and always helps them to be surrounded by that. Also paying attention to what kind of space you want to create with the music. So, and also recognizing that just because one person finds one thing relaxing doesn't mean another person might, right? So somebody may really appreciate like a very soothing or quiet classical piece, but for somebody else that might cause anxiety, and what they really want is some heavy metal, and that's what calms them down, and so recognizing the autonomy of the individual to kind of make those choices, and knowing your loved one so well. Music also has this way to match our moods and change our moods. And so that's a great way to integrate music. If you are in a place, we do this sometimes when music therapy, we work with people with bereavement, right? Who are bereaved. And you can use music to match where you're at, stay where you're at, or change where you're at. Because sometimes, especially in grief and loss, we want to sit with these feelings and experience these feelings and hold space for those feelings. And music can just do that, and creating a playlist of music that just encompasses that. Or, sometimes we're in a dark place and we don't want to be in a dark place. And so listening to music that we know brings us joy will naturally just bring us out of that space. So I hope that helps a little.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing. I am really interested in incorporating aspects of this into my own life. And, these are things that we can theoretically all do to, brighten our days and receive some of these benefits. And to wrap us out, what is one final thought that you would want to leave our listeners with?
Music therapy is really a wonderful career if people want to do that. It is not entertainment. Everything we do is based upon a plan of care, like every other discipline, right? We have goals, we have objectives, there's always a point to our craziness or our madness. But there are schools for music therapy all over the country. In almost every single state, there are programs that you can do in person as well as distance learning that are all about being able to be a person and not just a student. And it's absolutely worthwhile. I've never looked back. I would encourage any listener who might be interested in pursuing this to go to musictherapy.org, which is the national website, and search out schools. because it's the best.
Amazing. Well, Rachael, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Future of Caregiving, brought to you by Careaya. We hope you've enjoyed this exploration into the world of caregiving and you learned something new and valuable. If you want to stay up to date on all things caregiving, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Tune in every week as we release new episodes featuring exciting guests and powerful stories.